Star worship. What is star worship? I got this information off of the internet and chose it to explain what idolatry is. Idolatry means to worship something that is not God. So don't forget I got this information from off of the internet, which I call my Bible, and it is free, so let's thank the internet for giving us this information. We will take a look at the Israelites and see if they were involved in idolatry. So were the Israelites involved in idol worship, and was it wrong to worship the host of heaven? The answer is yes and no. Star worship, among the Israelites, was prevalent at one time. This is perhaps the oldest form of worship practiced by the ancients. According to observation of the stars in the east, very early led the people to regard the planets and the fixed stars as gods. The religion of the ancient Egyptians is known to have consisted preeminently of sun worship. Moses sternly warned the Israelites against worshipping the sun, moon, stars, and all the host of heaven, Deuteronomy 4:19-17. 3. It may be said that the prohibition of making and worshipping any image of that which is in heaven above implies also the stars and the other celestial bodies. EXXX4, Deuteronomy v8, the Israelites fell into this kind of worship, and as early as the time of Amos they had the images of Sikkuth and Kiun, the stars of their god. The latter name is generally supposed to denote the planet Saturn. Amos v26, RV. That the kingdom of Israel fell earlier than that of Judah is stated, 2 Kings 17:16, to have been due, among other causes, to its worshipping the host of heaven. But the kingdom of Judah in its later period seems to have outdone the northern kingdom in star worship. Of Manasseh it is related that he built altars to all the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of Yahweh, and it seems that it was the practice of even kings before him to appoint priests who offered sacrifices to the sun, the moon, the planets, and all the host of heaven. Altars for star worship were built on the roofs of the houses, and horses and chariots were dedicated to the worship of the sun. Star worship continued in Judah until the 18th year of Josiah's reign, 621 BC, when the king took measures to abolish all kinds of idolatry. But although star worship was then abolished as a public cult, it was practiced privately by individuals, who worshipped the heavenly bodies, and poured out libations to them on the roofs of their houses. Zeph. I5, J. 2, 19. 13, Jeremiah 7, 18, describes the worship of the Queen of Heaven to have been more particularly common among the women. Ezekiel, who prophesied in the 6th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, 591 BC, describes the worship of the sun as practiced in the court of the temple, Ezek 8:16 ETSEQ, and from Gisliv 17 ET-Sec. It may be seen that even after the destruction of the temple the women insisted on continuing to worship the Queen of Heaven. According to some, star worship is not of great antiquity among the Semites in general, nor among the Hebrews in particular, for the latter adopted this form of idolatry only under the influence of the Assyrians. but according to one that expresses the opposite opinion. He points to the fact that the Hebrew root which denotes the verb to swear is the same as that which denotes seven, and claims that this fact establishes a connection between swearing and the seven planets, and he furthermore declares that there are many biblical evidences of star worship among the ancient Hebrews. Thus, the fact that Terah, Abraham's father, had lived first at Ur of the Chaldees, and that later he settled at Haran, Gen. 1131, two cities known from Assyrian inscriptions as places of moon worship, shows that Abraham's parents were addicted to that form of worship. Ur was one of the two temple cities of the moon god Nana-Sin, who was also a biological being. According to legend, Abraham himself worshipped the sun, moon, and the stars before he recognized the true God in Yahweh. Abraham had to know the moon god and the God of Israel were biological beings. Abraham had to know the Enuma Elish, but was fooled by the hateful God of the Jews, just as people today are fools by God pushers in churches. The ancient Hebrews, being nomads, like the Arabs, favored the moon, while the Babylonians, who were an agricultural nation, preferred the sun. But, as appears from Ezek XX 7-8, the moon worship of the Israelites, even while they were still in Egypt, was combined with sun worship. The close similarity between the ancient Hebrews and the southern Arabs has led Hamel furthermore to find allusion to moon worship in such Hebrew names as begin with Ab, as in Abimelech and Absalom, or with M, as in Amminadab and Jeroboam, because these particles, when they appear in the names of southern Arabs, refer to the moon. The term star worship in the Talmud and in post-Talmudic literature is chiefly a censor's emendation for Avodah Zarah. In connection with star worship, it is related in the Mishnah that the rabbis were asked if God dislikes idolatry, why he did not destroy the idols. The rabbis answered, if the heathen worshipped only idols, perhaps God would have destroyed the objects of their adoration, but they worship also the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the host of heaven, and God cannot destroy the world on account of the heathen. Deuteronomy 12:29-32 When the Lord your God cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you displace them and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them, after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it, you shall not add to it nor take away from it. Deuteronomy 4:19 And take heed, lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. Deuteronomy 17:3 Who has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, either the sun or moon or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded. 2 Kings 17:16 So they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, made for themselves a molded image and 2 calves, made a wooden image and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. 2 Kings 21:3 For he rebuilt the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. He raised up altars for Baal, and made a wooden image, as Ahab king of Israel had done, and he worshipped all the host of heaven and served them. 2 Kings 21:5 And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. 2 Kings 23:4-5 And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, the priests of the 2nd order, and the doorkeepers, to bring out of the temple of the Lord all the articles that were made for Baal, for Asherah, and for all the host of heaven, and he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he removed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places all around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven. There are many other scripture we could have used like in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Acts 7:42 Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven, as it is written in the book of the prophets, Did you offer me slaughtered animals and sacrifices during 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? The Apostle Paul said he worshipped a God that didn't dwell in hand-made temples. The God of Israel did dwell in man-made temples and tents. Only stupid people worship gods that dwelled in hand-made temples. Now that you have studied information regarding the Israelites and how some at one time worshipped our sun and the host of heaven, what really was their idolatry? I tell you, the God of Israel was a biological being. He made an idol out of himself and made people worship him. That is idolatry. And guess what? That stupid God knew who our real God is and where he dwells. The Egyptians were taught by the Atlanteans who our Creator is and where he makes stars from. They called him a super cosmic God. So think our sun rules our cosmic and our Creator rules our super cosmic system? These Israelites were doing the right thing because God says he creates all around himself and that creation is his body. Therefore to worship the sun and the host of heaven is worshiping God. Worshipping the God of Israel is idolatry. Our God is a super cosmic sun. This is so simple even children can understand.